All right, this will be the first video, I think, in probably a three-part series on astral projection. This is part one, and we will discuss the astral world or the astral plane, this place that you supposedly go when you're out of body, okay? Or the place where you go when you dream at night, supposedly. Let's start with this way cool quote from Ava Wong. She has done research into Taoism, and she presents a lot of Taoist concepts in her various books. This is from her book called Being Taoist. Peng Yi was one of the forces of nature. He could walk on the snow and leave no footprints. Even the sun could cast no shadow by him. Moving like a spiral on a ram's horn, he rose with the wind and floated over grasslands, lakes, and mountains. When he descended to the ground, the earth embraced him, and when he ascended to the sky, the stars received him. Now, she presents this as though Peng Yi is able to do this in the physical world. If you have experience with astral projection or lucid dreaming, you quickly recognize that this is a description of the projection of the astral body or an exploration of the astral world via the dream body. And one of the side effects of doing the magical work or a rigorous discipline of meditation is that you can eventually become lucid in your dreams. What does that mean? Becoming lucid in your dreams means that you wake up while you're dreaming at night. And you wake up in the midst of the dream so that you can do what you want to some degree. Okay. Some dreams are more lucid than others. Okay. As you might know, those of you who practice meditation is largely about maintaining awareness. Ultimately, it's about not being hypnotized or just lulled into a trance by your physical environment and your experiences. And of course, the more you meditate or the more you do magical work, the more you begin to notice how most of the human race is essentially asleep or essentially in a state of hypnosis or trance, lulled into a sort of suggestive state by the physical senses, by their biology, and by their evolutionary trauma, all the stuff they inherit when they become incarnate. And one of the ways to deal with that is astral projection. Notice I didn't say one of the ways to escape that. One of the ways to deal with that. One of the most important thing about astral projection is that it can become a type of dream yoga. So you're not really escaping from the supposed physical world, but you are using astral projection to confront something very important about the physical world, which I'm going to talk about that in this video, I think. Let's see if that happens. Make no mistake, I practice lucid dreaming or astral projection because I love flying. There's no other reason, really. Well, there are other reasons to do it. Is there a difference between astral projection and lucid dreaming? Some of you have been contacting me insisting that there's a difference. Okay. There is a difference, okay, but I tend to relegate lucid dreaming to a type of astral projection. Okay, and so astral projection for me is the larger category, and then within astral projection we have lucid dreaming, and then we have other types of projection. Maybe some of you define it differently. To me, it's important not to dismiss lucid dreaming as not astral projection, because apparently when you view things remotely in the physical world, that is accomplished by first stepping into the dream world and then then beyond that, stepping into the space beyond your individual psyche. I'm starting to get into things that I'm not that experienced with, so that I can't really talk about with a lot of authority. Most of my ability to talk about this is in regard to lucid dreaming. So essentially the first stage of astral projection. When it comes to things like remote viewing, I have very limited experience with that. All right. This is kind of funny now because this is an illustration of Plato's allegory of the cave. And if any of you have been in a philosophy class, you are well aware of Plato's allegory of the cave. It's so complicated, okay? But he basically comes up with this schema of most of humanity is like those little guys over there on the left. They are chained to a rack, and they're being forced to watch shadows that are being projected onto a wall. And that's all they can really see are those shadows, okay? And behind them, we've got these figures going back and forth, creating those shadows with a light source, okay? And behind that, we have something called the real world, okay? So you might crop this up to Plato's genius because he came up with an analogy that was really difficult to come up with at the time. And the analogy that works much better for us now in the modern world is the theater. All right, the theater is a much easier analogy for us to wrap our heads around. So the condition of the average psyche is somebody who's sitting in the theater completely captivated by what's happening on the movie screen. Okay, what does this have to do with astral projection? We're about to get to that. Okay, so, and you might be watching a movie and you're totally captivated by the action that's happening on the screen as though it is all real. You're really worried about whether the hero is going to win his next battle, okay? And you actually flinch when stuff happens on the screen, like a massive explosion and things like that, right? As though it's all really happening. But then something might come over you. You might, as you flinch from an explosion on the screen, your chair squeaks. And suddenly you become aware that you're in a theater. And then you can look to the left and to the right, and you can see other people around you. They haven't noticed that you have noticed them. They are still captivated by the drama that's happening on the screen. But you have suddenly noticed the theater. And it's quite startling too, because then you begin to notice that, oh, all that stuff that was so captivating on the screen, that's a projection. It's not even necessarily real. It's real as a phantom sort of drama, but this world around me, the theater around me, is actually much more real than what I see on the screen in front of me. And you might actually get up from your chair, go to the front of the auditorium and touch the screen. You'll touch the movie screen and you'll be like, oh my God, this is reality. You're touching the silver screen, you know, and you see the image is still playing across it, but then you begin to notice that the actual reality is the theater all around you and the movie screen and the projector and all these people mesmerized by the drama, sitting in their chair, riveted to their seats. And you might go sit down in your chair again, and you're watching the drama on the screen, but now something's different. You cannot unsee that screen anymore. You keep seeing what's happening. It's like everybody else is captivated by the drama, but you see the drama, but you see the movie screen. and now you're aware of it, and your awareness of that movie screen is not going to go away anymore. You cannot unsee it anymore. This is sort of an initiation experience, okay? Obviously, this is analogous to a much deeper experience that I'm referring to. So when you look at the world, you begin to be not aware of the drama that's happening in the world, or the stuff that's going back and forth, and the explosions that are happening, and dramatic scenarios. You begin to notice that there's a backdrop, or there's some kind of a projection screen. Okay, and now this projection screen that you notice is the imagination. The only real foundation of reality is the mind, or the imagination. Okay, and now we're going to start talking about this projection screen, or the imagination, or the mind. Now you might want to imagine that when you're in the movie theater, well, let's talk about the movie theater for a second. You could get up, leave your chair, and walk in the opposite direction, and exit the movie theater, and then walk out into the parking lot and be blinded by how bright the sun is out there. And you're like, whoa, there's a whole world out here that's much more real than the one that I thought I was living in. Okay? This can be somewhat disturbing, okay? Because then you begin to realize that the physical world that people live in is not as real as the larger world of the imagination, which is much bigger than that silver screen in the auditorium behind you. All right, so the imagination is much bigger than the drama that's happening on that little screen, okay? The world of the movie screen, the auditorium, the projector, the lobby outside, and outside the lobby, the vast world full of the heavens and the sun and moon and stars. This is much bigger than what you thought it was. So let's go back into the auditorium. You go back into the auditorium, and now what you should do is you should imagine that silver screen where everything's being projected, that it now curves and wraps around you and envelops you in a sphere, so that the images being projected upon that movie screen are now in a sphere all around you. Okay? And this is what the Golden Dawn referred to as the sphere of sensation. So all of the drama of your supposedly physical life is being projected on this sphere of sensation. The reality of your consciousness is the sphere of sensation, not the drama that's being projected on the screen. All right. So now what happens with dreaming at night is that there's a sort of secondary movie going on. It is a projection that is free of the supposed physical world. All right. So when you dream at night, you enter your own private projection screen, okay? When you are supposedly awake during the day, you're still inside that sphere of sensation, but you can also see this larger world all around, sort of, even as you project all kinds of things on top of it. Okay, so when you're awake, supposedly awake, in your daytime world, when you're running around, paying your bills, going to work, feeding the pets, you can see the larger world, the larger universe, okay, and even as you're superimposing the sort of dream world on top of it. So you're still inside your sphere of sensation. When you go to sleep at night, then you're still inside your sphere of sensation, but then the images projected upon it are liberated from that larger world, from that physical world. And they start playing out these various dramas that are really more part of your personal karma, Yeah, the karma that you have basically inherited is now being projected all around you. Okay. Now that universal karma that's being projected on the screen while you're dreaming at night, it's not just yours. It's inherited from the entire human race and all of the life forms on the planet. Okay. I've talked about this before. Where does all that karma come from? Well, it comes from evolutionary trauma. And so, yeah, the Golden Dawn acknowledged that we sort of live inside this sphere of sensation. Okay. And now the images projected in that sphere are not necessarily projected on a sphere. That's just an analogy. Okay. They are projected in three-dimensional space. So you might want to imagine that the sphere is filled with air, and the images are actually projected on the very air inside that sphere. So no matter where you go, it looks like you're going somewhere. All right. But on some higher reality, you aren't going anywhere. Nothing's moving. Okay. And this is why, if you look at the Chariot card in the tarot, this is why that card is so weird. Like the guy who's in the chariot is somehow stuck inside a block of stone. And some of the versions of that chariot say it doesn't actually move, doesn't actually go anywhere. It's absolutely still. It's the world all around it that moves all around it. Okay, so when you think you're going somewhere in your chariot, you're not going anywhere. It's the world all around you that's moving. Uh-oh, okay. Very strange, I know, very strange. But on some level of reality, you aren't moving at all, okay? It's kind of like when you're sitting in that theater and it looks like you're traveling along with the main characters as they ride in their car because the landscape is moving all around and going past. It looks like you're going past, right? But no, you're just sitting in the chair in the theater. Okay, and you just for a while you've been beguiled into believing that you are moving through space when in fact excuse me, on a deeper level of reality, you are not. You're absolutely still. Does this mean that you are the only being in the universe? Like all the people that you see around you are just figments of your imagination? Well, if you are a psychopath and you're trapped inside your head, you don't have any heart consciousness, let's say, it might seem that way. And then everybody around you simply becomes, a figment of your imagination that you can manipulate without respecting who they are or any deep reality that's behind them or anything like that. Okay, so various philosophies come to the rescue when it comes to solipsism. So you're not the only being in the universe necessarily. There's a loaded concept. In the East, they have this idea of Indra's net, where the universe is like a giant net of jewels, and each jewel reflects all of the others all around it, within it. Okay, so it reflects the whole universe within it. This is the idea of the macrocosm and the microcosm. Okay, so you could see that we are all sort of, each of us is like a jewel or a philosopher's stone. And reflected within our sphere of sensation is the entire universe. Okay, and so we are, and the interesting thing is that a lot of the projections in our own little jewel world in this net are projections of our own karma. They're not real. Okay, except as karma. Okay, so karma is quite real as karma, but of course it's a projected illusion. All right. And so all the others, the people that you see around you, there's a reality to them, even though you are projecting your own version of them on top of them. And this is why, when people get married, they torment each other because the other person's not living up to their projected image of them. Okay, so the more you are caught up in your own karma, your own dream world, the more difficult it is for you to experience relaxation, happiness, freedom, because you're constantly being driven by the projections inside your sphere of sensation. And eventually what can happen is that you become so purified and so awake that you're barely projecting any of your personal karma at all, and you can really see clearly around you. And at that point, that your jewel that's immersed, or this little dewdrop that's surrounded you as you're immersed in Indra's net, you can venture outside of it, go beyond that. Okay, so when we lucid dream at night, we're pretty much inside our own sphere of sensation. It's still a lot of fun. Okay, but still you're largely playing with your own projections, your own karma, your own trauma is surfacing before your eyes. Okay, the nice thing is, when you achieve lucid dreaming, you can pretty much take control and not be compelled to run away from the monster, or if you have the dream that you're falling, you can suddenly stop falling. Maybe sometimes you can't control. Like there's strange currents and things going on. You can't control where you're going, but then you can stop the experience, and you can wake up if you want to, or you can stop falling and say, "Hey, I can fly. No need to go through this falling nightmare anymore." Okay. One of the interesting things about doing the magical work or doing any kind of mystical discipline is that over time you experience fewer and fewer nightmares. That's because the karma is being worked out, kind of dissolving. Okay. Are you ever going to be completely free of them? No, there's just too much going on in the human race, too much conditioning going on. But the nice thing is you become so aware during the dreams that you cannot be besieged by nightmares or taken over by them. I'm at a point where if something starts to get unpleasant in a dream, I can wake up in the midst of the dream, or I can simply wake up, or I can stop it from happening. I had a dream that I was in a car garage, and there was a car up on a lift, and I was walking underneath it, but then the car sort of started falling down on top of me, like sinking down on top of me. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. And I just held it up with a couple of fingers. I said, this is not going to happen right now. So I didn't have to wake up from the dream. And it was actually a trigger for me to wake up and become lucid in the dream, and simply get out from under the car and then go exploring. And usually I start flying right away. If it's possible. Sometimes it's not easy to fly. So what is physicality? Okay, so it seems to be that there is a larger mind or a larger imagination than our own. Okay, and this larger imagination sort of has us stuck in this supposedly physical world. But the physical world is also a dream world. And as we are immersed in that physical reality, we are still inside our sphere of sensation, and we are compelled to project our karma upon that physical reality. It's a very interesting situation to be in, because the physical world then triggers us in various ways to wake up from our conditioning, from our karma. Okay. I'm not sure why we're in this physical world. It doesn't quite make sense to me, because in the dream world, you can also do that. You can process karma. But I guess, I don't know, we need some kind of drama conditioned into us so that we can then experience what it's like to lose our identity and get lost, and then to find it again. It's like the whole universe is sort of a big game of hide and seek. So it's almost like the divine explodes and turns into a bunch of sparks. Those sparks pretty much spread out forming Indra's net. Okay, and then we all get stuck in that Indra's net, the spider web, right? And in the process of all that, then the divine can see itself and apprehend itself, but through all these different jewels everywhere. Okay, and you are one of those jewels, a philosopher's stone. Okay, you can also see it like you are a bubble. Let's return to that. Like you are a bubble on the surface of an ocean. Okay, so that bubble is made of ocean water. Okay, so it might seem limited because bubbles are limited, but the ocean is made of water and the bubble is made of water, so ultimately you are unlimited. All right, let's see if I can go back. Yeah, let's talk about this. The interesting thing is that for most of us, dreams at night are sort of vague, blurry, not much detailed, hard to remember. Okay, if you begin to experience astral projection beyond your sphere of sensation, apparently you enter a dream world that is can be extremely detailed, more detailed even than the physical world around you. And there are colors that you can experience in this astral plane that you have never experienced in the physical world, that's impossible to experience in the physical world. There are sensations that you can experience there that you cannot experience in the physical world. Okay, so the clearer your consciousness gets, the more likely you are able to step outside of your sphere of sensation. And then you might even be able to do remote viewing. Okay, I thought I was able to do that. I think I've achieved it a couple of times, but usually I get lost and I'm back in my own karmic dream world again. I go back into some memory, which is very vivid sometimes. It's amazing how clear your memories are. And some other part of, I don't know, the universe, maybe you go back into that memory and somehow it's crystal clear. Like there's not a detail that's been left out. And if you try to remember things that happened to you, like in your childhood, it's kind of blurry, vague, unclear, but it's possible to go back to those memories on the astral plane and they are absolutely clear and you can basically see all kinds of detail. Is the detail reliable? Can be, but it tends to it can be very clear, but it can morph and change shape. If you're in a dream world and you look at your watch, if you're wearing a watch in your dream, you look at the time, you might see a time, and then you look up and then you look back again, and then you'll see something else, not even time anymore. Maybe you'll see a little digital display of some kind of message or something like that. Nothing holds still. Nothing is very reliable in the dream world like that. And your astral body is very interesting in the dream world too. Just like that Taoist character, it tends not to cast a shadow. It's kind of like a vampire. It tends not to have reflections in mirrors. It's able to fly, sort of like some vampires, right? So yeah, we wonder where the legends of vampires comes from. And it's rumored that, people can survive after death and sort of prey upon the living, but they're in the dream world. They're not physical vampires with corpse-like bodies. They're astral vampires. And very interesting because vampires don't cast reflections in mirrors. They don't have shadows, things like that. Some of them can fly. They can change shape, which you can also do in your astral body, of course. So very interesting how your astral body is very much like a creature from a horror movie. So dreams are not inherently vague or blurry. They can become startlingly clear and even clearer than your physical senses will allow for. There apparently are senses that exist beyond the physical world. And if you get clear enough, you can visit other worlds, other levels of the astral plane, where there are different kinds of beings. There are worlds in the astral plane that have virtually no suffering at all. And the question is, what is the physical world here where we are? Is this some kind of a prison? Kind of. It's kind of a place where we're being like the people in Plato's cave. They were chained to the rack, and they were being forced to watch the images that appear on the wall. Or in the modern example, you're basically in the theater and you're riveted to your seat, completely mesmerized by the drama in front of you. That's the nature of the prison. But of course, in the theater analogy, you can easily notice what's going on either side of you. You can get up and then explore the real world or another level of reality. So is this physical world a sort of prison? No, but it certainly feels that way, because if you are completely captivated by the drama that's happening on the screen, then you're stuck. You got the blinders on, you can't see anything else. You're trapped inside that drama. So then, yeah, it's like you're in a nightmare and you can't wake up, sort of thing. Okay. So what is the world like for somebody who's really awake or like an adept, let's say, of the Golden Dawn? They are no longer compelled to project this sort of karmic drama all over everything that's happening. They see the same world you do. But unfortunately, if you're not an adept, you tend to see all kinds of things projected on top of that larger dream world, that physical world around you, okay? Whereas adept doesn't have to do that. They can turn it off, and they can just see the world as it is. Do they still have karma to process? Of course. Yeah, you can't be, in a physical form, you will never be free of karma. It's always going to be happening. In fact, without karma, your physical form would not exist. Okay. Physical form, remember, is not really physical. It's a projection. Okay, but it's a projection within the larger mind of the universe. All right. So with the example of the bubble, so if you were just a bubble on the surface of a infinite ocean, when you're doing the magical work, what is happening maybe possibly is that you're expanding that bubble, or you're stretching that bubble. You're playing around with the projections in it to explore the confines of that bubble. And apparently, eventually, if you become clear enough, you can venture outside of it or beyond it. Okay, but this whole notion of outside and beyond this bubble, that's not really accurate. It's not really possible to describe what that means, because inside and outside, that's a dualistic concept, okay? But it can seem as though, yes, you can escape that bubble and then explore other worlds. You can possibly do remote viewing and float through the wall and see what's happening in your neighbor's apartment or something like that. These things are apparently possible. I've tried to do that. I think I've achieved it a couple of times, not with a neighbor, but remote viewing. But I usually fall into some kind of karmic memory or dream world or something like that. So it doesn't seem reliable. It seems like eventually I could get clear enough and awake enough so that I could explore the physical world in terms of remote viewing, or go to other worlds where there are other beings who exist. There might even be sort of hell realms and hungry ghost realms and god realms where there's heavenly realms where there's almost virtually no suffering at all, and other realms where there's a lot of suffering going on. None of these worlds are permanent, as far as I can tell. Nothing that is manifest will be manifest that way forever. So the whole idea of hell existing the way it does in Christianity, like eternal torture, eternal is not in the picture. If anything about the astral world is clear, is that things keep changing. And even in this version of the astral world, which is the physical world, if you look, really look, nothing stays the same. Everything's constantly changing. Okay, so the physical world is not a good, it's not a good model for stability. So the standard notion of sanity that people have in the modern world tends to regard the physical world as the platform on which we're standing, and so a stable mind is supposedly one that is realistic or physical oriented. Okay, the physical world is not a good model for the absolute stability. Okay, absolute stability is the view screen of the mind. Okay, is that so? When you get up from your seat in the theater and you walk up to that silver screen at the front of the auditorium and touch it, that is the absolute stability, not the drama happening on the screen. Okay, so if you look around the room right now, all the things you see moving around, all the things you see presenting themselves, these are merely projections, and they appear on that absolutely still, absolutely stable, absolutely sturdy view screen of the imagination or the universal mind. That is the absolute solidity, the indestructible nature of reality that's all around you, the philosopher's stone. Okay, and the images that appear in there are mere projections, and that includes everything in the physical world as well. All of that is merely projections. Okay, and you, in your physical body aspect, are also one of those projections. Okay, so, and the question will then, of course, arise, well, if you are not really the projection, what are you? Okay, so yeah, the things that you identify with, your physical body, well, that's merely a character that's being projected on the screen of consciousness as well. So if that's not you, who are you? Where are you? Okay, so, and this is what we discover, through the work. Is it easy to say what that thing is, what you really are? No, of course not. The language itself will end up defeating us as we do that. All right, this is part 1 in the astral projection series. Okay, there are probably going to be 2 more videos. And the next video, we will talk about reification and de-reification practices, the things that you can do to see through your karmic projections so that you can become clearer and clearer and then experience these amazing lucid dream states and maybe even astral projection beyond that point, where you can do remote viewing and things like that. Okay, yeah, the third video is probably going to be the how-to. This is how to do it. Okay, but that's easy to learn. You can just Google that, and you can come up with all kinds of cool ways of inducing lucid dreams. But in the third video, I will give the various techniques for inducing lucid dreams. Might even talk about how to achieve astral projection while in the waking state without having to go to sleep at night. We'll see. All right, until next time.